Oh, hello there, everyone. It's good to see you all again today. So, this is our final story together, and that makes me a little sad. That's okay. So, the story we're going to share is the story about Israelites. Now, the people of Israel journeyed through the vast wilderness for years. Finally, they arrived at a mountain called Mount Sinai, where they rested. And God gave instructions to their leader, Moses, for their life together in this new land. Now, these were the things God said. In this land, we will practice Sabbath together. This will happen not only on the seventh day, but the seventh year. For 6 years, we will do our regular work and plant seeds. We'll grow, prune, and harvest fruit. But in the seventh year, we'll let the land rest. Even the land needs peace and quiet. Everyone will be able to harvest and eat whatever the land gives us in that seventh year. In the 50th year, we will celebrate Jubilee together. This will be like the Sabbath every 7 years, where we'll let the land rest. It will be a fresh start for the whole community. The land and the people and everyone will go to their own homes and be together in joy. It is a holy time, and we will be fed and nourished by whatever the land gives us. And this time, we will respond with justice by giving fresh starts. This means that we will be fair and honest to one another. We will take care of those who are sick, alone, old, or need help. We will welcome people who are from different countries, and they will be like family. We will work for people's freedom. We will all work together to help everyone rest and rejoice in God's abundance. I will bless the land during this year, so you do not even have to work the land. I promise we will all be fed and nourished by the land's gifts. So, what do you imagine when you hear the word justice? Do you imagine courthouses? Do you imagine what happens when someone hurts you and they are punished for it? Do you imagine it's like equal treatment? Everyone gets the same amount of food or treats? Often, God's ideas are very different from ours. God's idea of justice looks more like all the ways we've talked about compassion, seeing and welcoming, being brave and honest, loving ourselves, being present with each other. It means we see God's abundance. What does abundance mean? It means there's enough for everyone. We can welcome all to the table. We can be brave and trust each other. We can be honest with our hearts. We can give and receive and care. And we can do the work with God to care for all creation. And that's some good work. Well, friends, I have loved getting to see you all today and all week. Thank you for being such good listeners to my stories. I'll miss you all, but have a great year. Goodbye.
Welcome back, everybody. What did you think of that final story with Merle? That's a pretty crazy story, right? The year of Jubilee. Have you ever heard of that word, the Sabbath? Because Merle mentions that a lot in the story. The Sabbath is actually what we celebrate on Sundays typically at church. It's called our Sabbath. And a lot of times the Bible actually tells us we should rest on the Sabbath day. And so that's why when Merle was talking about resting on the Sabbath and taking time to rest, that's why they were kind of talking about don't just take one day, but every every several years, they would do one big Sabbath where everyone would take time to rest. And then every 50 years was supposed to be the year of Jubilee, where it was just a whole year of rest. Isn't that pretty crazy? And there was supposed to be a helping of the poor and bringing people in and all these really awesome things that were all about showing compassion. And like we learned, compassion also leads to justice, right? So over these past 5 days together, we've learned a lot about compassion together. And the great thing is, I know I've learned a lot from all of you. So remember all the ones we've learned. We learned that compassion begins with seeing, feeling, and welcoming. We talked about how compassion helps us to be brave and how it's important to love and care for ourselves. We also learned last time how it helps us to be open to people we encounter, remember, along the way, to lead and to trust God and trust that God will lead us. So today, for our last time together, we explored how compassion can give us a fresh start. And that all started through the beautiful tradition of Jubilee. Jubilee kind of means a fresh start. It helps us to see, feel, and trust God's abundance because there is enough for everyone. We can share it because there's enough. It's not going to run out. God's abundance is enough for everyone. And it's meant for all people and all creation. It's not just meant for me. It's not just meant for you. It's meant for all people. So when we make space for rest, like on the Sabbath, and when we make space for gathering together at our tables, even if it's virtual like this, and if we make space for caring for those who need the most help, those are great ways to show God's compassion. So I have a couple questions I want to ponder together. Why do you think fresh starts are important? Why do you think it's important to rest? Why do you think it's important to celebrate? What are things that we can celebrate? How does all of this help us to share God's compassion? So, with all those questions kind of boiling around, let's sing our compassion prayer song. And I'll start us off, okay? May we be filled with compassion. May we be filled up to the top of our hearts when we have the power to make something right. May we show God's love. May we be shown compassion. May we be found in the center of peace when we have needs that others can meet. May we find God's love. Great job. So now, as always, we have a couple more songs down in the description below. So if you'd like to take some time to listen to those songs, you can totally do that, and I'll just give you a second to do that if you want. All right. So everyone, God's compassion is God's justice. I'll say that one more time. God's compassion is God's justice. And so working for God's justice is making things right. It releases God's abundance into the world, and it makes sure that everyone has what they need. So when we rest and we help people and the land to rest, we show God's justice, which is pretty cool that we get to be God's hands for justice. So when we gather together at our table in joy, we also show God's justice. When we care for those who need the most help, we show God's justice. Justice, remember, justice means making things right. And that's what happens when we are compassionate. So when we are compassionate people, we make things right. We make God's justice happen in the world, which is pretty amazing. So here, these are the 5 ways that we learned this week about showing compassion. See if you can remember them. The first one is seeing and then welcoming, right? The second one is being brave and showing up. The third one is to remember to love ourselves. The fourth one is being present with each other. And then the last one is a fresh start. Making sure we can all have a fresh start, because everyone needs a fresh start every once in a while. And when we do these things, God shows love, peace, and justice with the world. And what a greater world it would be if everyone could show God's compassion. So, before we close with prayer, I just want to remind you all today that today is our little science experiment with the Skittles, which is really cool. So make sure you do that. We're going to have a video that you can watch online, and I'm going to send one out as well. And then also we're going to have the closing ceremony live. If any of you are able to do that as well, you are more than welcome to. But wow, I am just so grateful for this week, and it has been so fun to be with all of you, and I'm so glad that you were a part of it. So thank you for coming out and learning how to be compassionate people and learn how to spread God's justice. So let's close one final time with our prayer. So put one hand on your head, one on your heart, because we feel compassion in our brain, but we feel it in our heart, right? Joyful Spirit, your loving hands are always creating freedom, release, and fresh starts. Help us do the same today by caring for all living things with gentleness and care. Open us to humbly receive that same care ourselves. Make our hearts smile and our actions sing with your promise of abundance toward the whole world. Amen. Well, everyone, I will miss seeing you every day. It has been such a blessing to have you all this week. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your summer. Goodbye.